Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Energy Policies Energy Leaders Spotlight series, where we have one-on-one conversations with energy leaders. And we are very fortunate today to have one of the foremost visionaries in this sector, Rudy Wynter from National Grid. Rudy, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Bill.
And I'll just give a couple of small snippets from your bio because it's so lengthy. Rudy has spent more than 30 years with National Grid in a wide variety of executive positions. And today he is the president of National Grid's New York business, where he is responsible for financial, operational, customer, all the pieces of that business, as well as interacting with regulators, government officials, and the communities that National Grid serves. So we're very fortunate to have Rudy with us today. And really just to start, Rudy, we would love to hear a little bit about National Grid. When people hear National Grid, they often think about the UK, but in fact, it's a global energy company doing amazing things in many places. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about National Grid's New York business and what National Grid's doing with your partners like National Grid Ventures to address the clean energy transition.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Bill. And you're right. While National Grid is headquartered in the UK, we're traded on the London Stock Exchange, our businesses are primarily focused on the UK and North America. I have the privilege of running our New York business. And in our New York business, we've got about 4.2 million customers across upstate New York and downstate New York. And our primary goal is delivering safe and reliable energy to those customers. We deliver natural gas and we deliver electricity. Increasingly, because of the times that we're in and the ambitious goals that we have in New York, we're very focused on building the infrastructure that New York needs and our customers need so we can hit our aggressive clean energy goals. So we're doing a lot on integrating renewables onto the grid. We're doing a lot on driving energy efficiency and helping consumers use less energy. And we're making investments every day in transmission, distribution, in gas, and in electric. Added to that, we are also, through our National Grid Ventures arm, participating in bids to deliver offshore wind to the Northeast as well. So we've got a lot going on, but it's all around delivering clean, reliable energy, doing that today and doing that throughout the energy transition and making sure that it's clean, it's fair, and it's affordable.
Thanks. And the regulatory statutory framework for that in New York is particularly distinctive because New York's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the CLCPA as it's often called, established some of the most aggressive clean energy goals anywhere in the world. And maybe you could talk for a couple of minutes about what National Grid is doing to meet these ambitious, challenging emissions reductions objectives.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned in New York, the CLCPA is really charting the path of how we'll decarbonize the economy across the state. And at its core, the cornerstone is around electrification. It's around electrifying transport, electrifying heat, electrifying parts of the economy, but at the same time, making sure that electricity is supplied by renewable sources. So as the state is building up and as we're building up renewable and clean electricity sources, electrification will play a critical role in driving those clean energy targets. What we're doing is we're making the investments in those networks to deliver on that clean energy future. On the transmission part of our business in New York, we're partnering with the New York Power Authority on a transmission project that will unbottleneck countless megawatts of existing renewables that are in upstate New York, and at the same time create some headroom and capacity so that we can put additional renewables onto the network in upstate New York. Across our New York footprint, we've got an aggressive target of building out 16,000 EV charging ports so that we continue on our path to electrifying the transport sector in New York State. And as I mentioned before, through National Grid Ventures, we are developing offshore wind proposals to meet New York's clean energy targets. But we are also investing in our natural gas networks. We do believe that the natural gas network is going to play a key role. It's going to play a key role because not every consumer can either afford to electrify, or sometimes it's an older building and it is very hard to electrify. So while we are doing a lot on electrification, we have to think about ways of decarbonizing the natural gas network. And that's what we're focused on doing as well, delivering natural gas effectively and safely, but also how do we incorporate renewable natural gas and in the future green hydrogen so we can decarbonize that natural gas network as well.
Now, as you really laid out, it's kind of an all hands on deck to achieve the goals that we all have. And while you all are clearly engaged in this effort, the electrification of New York requires homeowners, businesses also to play a major role in making changes to their homes and their business locations in order to achieve this. What kinds of programs does National Grid have to encourage these customers, whether they're residential or business, to take the steps to electrify or to install the kinds of equipment and other sorts of facilities necessary to achieve these goals? And do these customers sort of know what's expected of them and what the impact will be? How does that all work?
Yeah, great question, Bill. And you're right, it is an all hands on deck. So part of this, we are going to play a key role in, and we're doing that. As I mentioned before, we're investing in transmission to interconnect renewables. When you look at community solar across New York State, 40% of it is connected onto our networks. We're investing in smart meters so customers and consumers can have more data and tools to help them use less energy. And as you alluded to, we've put in place some programs that consumers can take advantage of where they have no cost energy audits that can be done on their homes, so they can do weatherization. There are rebate programs that we have in place and rebate programs we partner with NYSERDA on that help consumers financially buy heat pumps and do the installations and do the energy efficiency they have to do on their homes. So there are a host of programs that we are supporting, a host of programs that we're sponsoring and promoting with consumers. But you're right. The consumers across New York, we have to raise awareness for their role they're going to have to play in looking at ways of utilizing energy less, leveraging and taking advantage of some of the incentives that we have so they can adopt new technologies as well. I think, to be honest with you, there's more to be done on raising that awareness of consumers and the roles they're going to play. But you know, Bill, I know New Yorkers, and I know that they will rise to the occasion when that time comes.
And raising awareness, I think, as you say, is incumbent on all of us to do that. The more education, the more information we have in conversations like this and otherwise, is a critical path to getting that information out there. You know, another key aspect of this is that energy and environmental justice is a crucial component of this transition. What will it take to ensure that as New York goes through this transition, that it's equitable for all customers and communities across the state? And really, this is obviously a national issue too, really in every place that's undertaking the same sorts of programs.
Yeah, Bill, you know, like I said when we started, the energy transition has to be clean, fair, and affordable, and it can't leave anyone behind, right? And I'll talk about it in a couple of different ways. One way I'll talk about is making sure that all communities have access to clean energy resources, right? I'll also talk about it in terms of affordability and helping consumers who are vulnerable pay for their energy. And I'll also talk about it in terms of the jobs that are going to get created because of this energy transition. We have to make sure that all communities are prepared for those jobs and know about those jobs and have access to those jobs. So I'll talk about it in a couple of different lenses. As I mentioned, the first one was making sure all communities have access to clean energy. We participate in and lead in the NYSERDA program called Solar for All, where low-income consumers have access to community solar at no cost to them. When you look at the rebates that we put in place for some low and moderate income consumers as well, so they have access to new technologies, that's also going to be critical and going to be key. I also talked about affordability. You know, it's not lost on us that energy and their energy bills are sometimes burdensome to residential customers, to businesses as well. That's why we launched a $17 million winter customer assistance program to help consumers pay for their energy bills at those critical times in the winter when they need help the most, but also do campaigns and meet with customers face to face and connect them with other services that they need. So we really do feel that it's part of our obligation as an energy provider to make sure consumers have access to clean energy, and they have access to help when they need it. The other part I talked about was the job growth. I mean, there's going to be, I think, significant job growth that comes from the energy transition, whether it's around energy efficiency and weatherization, installing heat pumps, maintaining heat pumps, building out infrastructure, whatever it is. We want to make sure all our communities across New York State are represented. And probably for far too long, some Black and brown communities and poorer rural communities in New York were not a part of those energy jobs. So we're making some investments with our not-for-profit partners and government partners in workforce development programs to make sure these young adults get the training that they need so that we have that workforce and that diverse workforce we're going to need to meet the clean energy future. The last point I'd make to that, Bill, is when we think about environmental justice and these communities that we serve, we have to make sure that small businesses remain vibrant. Small businesses are a key part to making sure communities grow and communities are economically vibrant. In New York, we have something we call Project C. And Project C is our customer and community commitment. And that's our umbrella program that we utilize to work with customers, work with communities. As part of Project C, we've invested over $7 million in grants to help over 100,000 small businesses across our service territory.
Thanks, Rudy. I mean, really fascinating, and it shows how broad and complex this piece of the puzzle is. It's affordability, it's labor, it's small business, it's communication, inclusion. So thank you for that. And I wanted to touch on another key area, which is government, because we all know that legislation, regulation is so relevant in this area. What is it that federal, state, and local policymakers must do, in your view, to make this monumental shift possible? What are the kinds of things you're looking to government to do to be part of effectively achieving these goals?
So you're absolutely right. We have to partner with our government agencies and policymakers. I think on a few things. I'll lay some of them out for you that come to mind. First and foremost, when we talk about electrification, that's going to drive up demand. Driving up demand means we have to make sure that our networks are ready and they're able to facilitate that demand to be met in a safe and reliable fashion, which means we have to build out infrastructure. Whether that infrastructure is transmission, whether that infrastructure is increased renewables at different locations. So that gets me to my first thing I think government needs to focus on, and that is permitting and siting reform. This is an infrastructure business. If we're going to build out that infrastructure and we have to build it out ahead of the need or just in time, we need to really take a hard look at how we do our planning, how we do our siting, and how we do our permitting. Right now, if we look at those existing processes, it will take too long. So number one is I'll call it planning reform. And under planning, I consider permitting and siting and all of that. We have to think of streamlining that entire timeline down. The second thing that comes to mind is when I look at New York, if you look at upstate New York, roughly 90% of the energy in upstate New York is coming from clean sources, renewables, hydro. You look at downstate New York, roughly 90% are coming from fossil fuel generation. One of the things we've had to look at in New York is make sure we're supporting the upgrades and infrastructure we need to connect upstate New York and downstate New York, so we can have a better flow of clean energy and reliable energy throughout the entire state. The third thing that comes to mind, I think throughout today's discussion, you heard me talk about energy efficiency. And we have still a lot we can do around energy efficiency across the state of New York. So I would say the third thing for policymakers to focus on are energy efficiency codes and making sure we have the right codes in place and we have the right incentives in place as well to help consumers take advantage of the technologies that are out there. And then the fourth and final thing I would say is this is a big challenge that we have. When you have a big challenge, you don't want to depend on only one solution. So the fourth and final thing I would say is to policymakers, consider a full range of decarbonization solutions. Yes, electrification is going to play a key role. We also have to look at decarbonizing those natural gas molecules with increasing the use of renewable natural gas, increasing the use of green hydrogen, so we can decarbonize with other strategies as well.
Let me, as a final question, zero in a little bit on one of the toughest challenges in that decarbonization effort. Because in New York City, particularly, where, as you mentioned, 90% is still fossil fuel, decarbonizing older buildings and manufacturing sites is a particularly difficult challenge. How do we address that part of the puzzle and still achieve the ambitious goals the CLCPA has set out?
Yeah, Bill, you're absolutely right. Older housing stock, older building stock make it challenging to electrify. I'm not saying they can't, but it'll be expensive, it'll be difficult or complex. If you look at a study that the New York City Mayor's Office of Sustainability did about 2 or 3 years ago, it points to New York City having about almost a 60% of the building stock will be difficult to decarbonize or difficult to electrify. That gets me back to my earlier point around how do we decarbonize the molecules that are in the natural gas network to help us drive towards those goals. So in New York State, we have passed an all-electric building act, which basically says, for new construction, it can't go on the natural gas network. It'll go onto the electric network or go geothermal or something. Got it. What we're talking about now is the built environment. How do we go after that? And with that, we have to bring all our tools to bear. And that's where I say we have to look harder at and making sure we are utilizing renewable natural gas where possible. Renewable natural gas is essentially capturing the methane emission that comes from organic waste, whether it comes from food or whether it comes from farms, capturing that methane emission, cleaning it and putting it back into the network so it can be reused. We are doing a program with the New York City DEP at Newtown Creek, which is an area in New York where the DEP brings food waste from around the city. At that location, we've built a renewable natural gas facility that will capture that decomposing matter, the methane that was released from that, capture it and reuse it. When the whole network is up and running, it will have enough RNG to meet the needs of about 5,000 homes. So that's what we're going to have to do, Bill. We're going to have to look at a number of solutions. Like I said before, there are multiple ways of decarbonizing the sector. And when you have an issue as big as this and as complex as this, you have to bring all your solutions to bear.
Well, thanks, Rudy, and thanks for being part of our Spotlight series. I mean, our thanks to Rudy Wynter, who's clearly one of the leading visionaries in this space, and for laying out all the different things across multiple fronts that National Grid is doing as part of the transition we're in. We appreciate your time and joining us today, and we look forward to speaking with you more about these issues as we go forward. So thanks very much.
I look forward to it, Bill. Thank you.